Hey, what's up to all you writers and filmmakers out there? This is Ron K. Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire, here with a new video. And this video, I'm going to talk about how your superheroes are not heroes after all. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button for when I go live, when I upload recorded videos, you'll get notifications on that. So let's talk about this subject matter real quick. What prompted me to make this video was a review by the Critical Drinker of Black Panther. Now, he did like an 8-minute video where he reviewed Black Panther, saying it's the most overrated MCU film out there, which is just total exaggeration. It's not the most overrated film of the MCU. And more importantly, in his review, he points out all the plot holes and the flaws that are in the film, which if you watch any superhero film or any sci-fi film, any fantasy film, any horror film, there are always plot holes. And Black Panther is not immune to that. Though it's not a perfect film, I think the film goes a long way in addressing very important racial issues. And to that point, the Critical Drinker says that the idea of racial identity, the race issue about how, the whole idea of Killmonger wanting to right the wrong of racism by launching an all-out scale war on the planet and freeing Black people from oppression is a subject that is more complex than what can be handled in the film, and it should not be in there, nor should the film deal with the idea of a Black identity. So then he goes on again to state more issues with the film. Now, this is coming directly out of racism. Though I like his channel, it's very obvious that a lot of reviewers, especially young white male reviewers, are having trouble with this new age of identity politics, of diversity. And specifically what they're having problems with is the prominence of characters that are being pushed to the forefront that are African-American, Black, and the focus being on them as opposed to the traditional white male characters. So this is kind of rocking their world and upsetting the status quo. So he reveals this in his review. And the problem that I really have, I'm going to put a link to the review in my description box, is that he fails to point out the myriad of problems that exist in other superhero films that far surpass any plot holes you'll find in the movie Black Panther. And I kind of wrote a review to his review critiquing him. And let us be clear on something. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to put things in perspective. The superheroes that we hold in such high esteem, that we aspire to be like, are not so heroic after all, when you put them in perspective. If you look at Captain America and what he stood for, Captain America did not fight at the period of when he became Captain America, did not fight against racism, did not fight against oppression for Black people, though it was very prominent during his age. There was segregation, there was redlining, there was Jim Crow laws. But did Captain America address those? He didn't. In fact, what he stood for was the protection of America's values at the time, which were based on racism and sexism, and which he did not address as a superhero. The same can be looked at as the son of Krypton, Superman, Kal-El, the most powerful superhero who stood for truth, justice, and the American way. Again, what was the American way during the 50s when he was at his prominence as a comic book character? It was about racism, the Klan terrorizing Blacks in the South, segregation, Jim Crow. The most powerful superhero, Kal-El, Superman, son of Krypton, did nothing to end racism, which he could have done. Batman, Bruce Wayne, the Dark Knight, maybe he wasn't so dark, could have ended the inequality, economic inequality in Gotham City. And who were the most oppressed? Who were discriminated against, marginalized, paid less, were African Americans. Who were the ones victims of the influx of drugs? African Americans. But did Batman address that? Did Bruce Wayne address that? No. So these so-called superheroes that we want to look at as heroes had a very narrow-minded, myopic view of what justice was. In fact, they were blind to the oppression, to the injustice that was happening to a large percentage of the American people known as African Americans. So when the critical drinker comes out and talks about plot holes in the Black Panther, how it should be about discussing racial identity, or it shouldn't be about the topic of Killmonger wanting to start a revolution to free Black people across the planet from oppression. That's his way of ignoring the real problems that exist in this country, because Black Panther, though it has its flaws, was instrumental and right in tackling this subject and posing this question. And it presented two sides of the argument, T'Challa and Killmonger. And it allowed you to take a side. It allowed you to decide for yourself what side of the fence were you on. And I think the mere fact that the film did that went a long way in really addressing real world problems, more than any other superhero film has done. Kal-El learning from the Kents on the farm. A family, blue-collar family, did not translate values to Clark Kent about the oppression of people economically. The farmer's plight, what poverty is, who's disproportionately affected by poverty, Black people. Clark Kent learned none of that. Yet he's supposed to be an investigative reporter for the Daily Planet. Yet he's supposed to stand for truth, justice. Well, where was the justice? Batman, with all his billions, Bruce Wayne, billions of dollars, could not see who was the most economically oppressed in Gotham City. Didn't realize that Black people didn't create crack, didn't grow the drugs, that they were being shipped in by South America, from South America, and been allowed by the US government to go in and flow into the Black communities. Bruce Wayne, with the back computer and all that, couldn't figure that out. Captain America couldn't realize the fact that the American way he was fighting for, that the country he was fighting for, was founded on racism, was founded on slavery. So don't tell me, the critical drinker, in your review that Black Panther has plot holes in it. Because if Black Panther has plot holes in it, then all these other superhero films are Swiss cheese. And because individuals like him, white males like him, cannot deal with the fact that the times are changing, and that we're seeing now a little bit more representation in Hollywood by people of color, just a little bit more, we see this pushback and people are freaking out over it. And I'm telling you, this little progress that we're making is not enough. Black Panther made $1 billion at the box office, but that was just one film. We need many more films like that. But you know what? He's not the first to freak out. Many others have voiced their opinions and expose themselves as racists. And really what they need to do is keep their mouths shut, because it exposes how dumb they are. It was just only recently that Terry Gilliam, filmmaker who did Time Bandits, talked about how unrealistic Black Panther is, to how it presents a fantasy, a delusion for young African-American children. Well, excuse me. Don't most Hollywood films do that? Present a sci-fi version or fantasy version of reality? Isn't that what movies are supposed to do? But yet when Black Panther does it, Terry Gilliam gets all upset and freaks out about it because it was successful, that's why. Because individuals like him are not used to seeing African Americans in a prominent position of power, and it disrupts their worldview, and they can't handle it. So I just want us to put this in perspective, that maybe we should take a second look at these superheroes and start asking real questions about what they did and what they accomplished. Because it seems to me that their perspective on justice was only out for the dominant status quo. And it really wasn't about justice. It was about just keeping in place the current system of inequality. And maybe Marvel, DC have not really been aware of this, but now it's time that they start to look at this. And then there will be some who will say, well, in issue number 10, we did have Captain America address the issue with the Nazis and fight, but yeah, but that was not his prominent goals and objectives. That may have been one issue, one comic book. But otherwise, it was business as usual, protecting the status quo, ensuring that the American way during the 50s and 60s of racism, oppression, and segregation was upheld. None of these superhero characters went against the grain and challenged the government on those issues. In my opinion, if the son of Krypton, Superman, was the most powerful superhero and he did nothing to end racism, then he is not a superhero. He is not worthy of praise, because you failed in the most basic aspect of looking at who were the most oppressed and disenfranchised and addressing their issues first, who were victimized by their own country, who worked hard to build this country and could not participate in the fruits of their own labor. That's a big miss on your part as a superhero. So I just want us to think about that. Keep that in mind when we want to go buy a ticket to our next DC or Marvel film. This is Ron K. Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire. Until my next video, keep making films.